Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me. Let's start out with something. Have you ever gone to a department store and found the perfect dress? It is so you. Well, actually, it's the you that you know you could really be if you were wearing that dress and people saw you in it. Now, it's interesting, there's only one of these. It's on sale. Yay! It's not exactly your size, but you buy it anyway, right? Because you take it home, you hang it in your closet, and you just know that if you diet and exercise enough, someday you're going to be wearing the perfect dress. So time passes. Months, all right, admit it, sometime even years, and it hangs in the closet tormenting you and reminding you you are obviously not dieting and exercising hard enough or you'd be able to wear it by now. A trusted friend comes up to you and says, you know, Mary, I was shopping and I found this dress. It is really your style. I happen to know it's your size, it would be perfect. What do you say? You want to try it on? Well, do you try it on, or do you look wistfully at the closet and go, oh no, I really want that dress? There's a correlation to the craft of writing. For instance, I work with a lot of aspiring screenwriters who just know that Hollywood is going to come pounding on their door for whatever they're writing. This is going to be the next blockbuster. I have to gently tell them, no, I really don't think so. That's not to say you will never be a screenwriter. It is to say, though, that this particular plot is not a natural fit for the silver screen. It would really fit much better somewhere else. So what I'm going to be talking to you about today on stage, page, or cinema, and I really encourage a lot of audience participation. If you have questions, don't be shy about speaking up. This will apply whether you've been struggling with a current project and you just can't figure out why it's not working, or you've come up with a hot new idea and you're not sure what's going to be the best vehicle to deliver that plot to your readership or to your audience. So by a show of hands, how many of you here have either written or are currently writing short stories? Okay. How many novelists are here? All right, this is a lively, fun group. I like you guys. How many playwrights? Yay! I'm always excited to find playwrights. Before this morning is over, all of you are going to want to be playwrights, because now that you know my bio, I love theater. How many aspiring screenwriters? Okay, we have a nice mix here. For those of you who are the short story writers, short story writers, raise your hands again. Who were you? Okay, they're in the back, in the lovely red top. Why did you decide a short story is the best medium for your plot? You. And speak up or stand up so everyone can hear what you have to say.
Why do I decide a short story? Usually, for some reason or the other, I have a tendency to try to condense things up, put it in a certain time frame.
Okay.
So I just get right to the point. It usually doesn't take a lot.
Okay. Cut to the chase and short stories done. Another short story writer. Why did you? Yes.
I didn't decide. I wrote it and it was.
Sometimes fate just decides for you. The gentleman next to you.
It's a tighter format. You have to work within a tighter field as opposed to a novel where you can sort of wander. So you have to get your beginning, middle, and end and set the tone and be finished with it in a very tight format as opposed to a novel.
Okay. Short stories are probably the best way to hone your storytelling skills because you have a small space to work with. If, for instance, you were entering a contest for a really short story and the word cap was 300 words, you really can't go to the judges and say, oh, but things really don't start to take off until page 165. You do have to cut to the chase, make every single word count, every scene, every character. You don't have a lot of meandering around room. Short stories are an excellent choice if you only have a handful of characters and a handful of settings, and it's a compressed time frame. Short stories also work if basically your plot is one joke, one punchline, one message. In other words, anything that you can't taffy pull and get to sustain for pages and pages and pages. Another interesting thing about short stories, of the 4 things we'll be talking about, short stories are the least vulnerable to the curse of spoiler gates. Don't you just hate it when you've really been looking forward to a book or to a movie and a friend of yours says, oh, yeah, that's the one where the sister-in-law was the killer. And you say, oh, no, why did you tell me? I wanted to find this out myself. Short stories are short enough. Have you ever spoiled a short story for someone? No, it was a good story. You wanted them to be as surprised and delighted and amazed as you were. You don't want to rob them of that experience. So if it's important to you to not have anyone go spoiler dating on your plots, short stories. Okay, the novelists again. Show of hands? Okay, in the lovely green here, why did you pick a novel for your plot?
Novel, for me, I actually write mostly short stories and novellas. A couple of novels I've done is when I went back to edit the novellas, by the time I got done, I had novels.
Okay. All right. Another novelist. They're in the back?
Because I'm slightly loquacious, and so I ended up writing a trilogy, which gives you an idea that I'm on the other end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm. I find a lot of times with people who have started out writing a short story and they fall in love with their characters and they really don't want to say goodbye to them, so they just keep writing and they write sequels and they write trilogies and then they say, oh, I'm just going to go ahead and write a series. I can't say goodbye. Another novelist, why did you choose a novel? Yes, right here?
I mostly work on character-driven plots, and by the time I get a character developed, and why is this person this way, and then supporting characters, it doesn't fit in a short story.
Okay. Over here.
I'm one of the few Western writers in the group,
Uh-huh.
and I see an epic in my head, but I can't quite get it there yet, but I know it's going to be a terrific epic movie.
Okay.
Can't do it in a short story.
All right, the 300-word
Yeah.
cap, that's not going to work for you, right? Okay. I saw a hand over here somewhere. Gentlemen.
I like to write a story where the world is going to end,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes a while to build to that, huge climax, and everything depends on the main character, and then you do the twist at the end and pull everything together. So
Mhm.
it just takes that much time.
Okay. Novels are a good form for things that take a lot of development. It not only has a plot, it has subplots. It has a plethora of characters all running around doing interesting things. Novels are all about imagination. It's painting the word pictures for your readers. It's allowing them to do the casting in their own heads. A lot of times, maybe even casting themselves in swashbuckling roles or romantic leads or saving the world from ending. You've all done that, right? You've read a book and said, yeah, that's me. I could be that character. You have a lot of room to develop everything. You can do the backstory. You can also get into your characters' heads and feelings. With stage plays and screenplays, we don't know what a character is thinking or feeling unless they go tell someone. Or they do soliloquies, they talk to themselves. You don't want to do that excessively because it gets a little boring after a while. In film, you can also have voiceovers. A classic being Woody Allen's Annie Hall. The characters are there in front of us, but you hear this voiceover of what they're thinking and how they're messing up the date, and I'm making all these mistakes, what am I going to do? In a book, we can read what the authors, what the characters are thinking at any time, or feeling, or reflecting on the past. And you have this vast, epic territory that you can cover. You can have a multi-generational story. You can have things that stretch over different countries, different continents. All those pages are your playground to have a lot of fun. And you can go into as much detail as you want. For those of you, I was talking to some of you who are writing historical fiction. You've done all of this rich, fabulous research, and you want to be able to give the readers a context for this story. Again, don't overkill it. I know you want to show your readers how much research you did and how smart you are. To this day, I've read Gone with the Wind a couple of times. I've never actually read the whole thing because I was going, Civil War, yeah, I know how it comes out. I want to get back to what Rhett and Scarlett are doing. And you don't want to bore the readers with too much research if it's at the expense of the character development and the plot. You don't want to make them feel like they're in a high school history class and they have to commit all of this to memory because there's going to be a test on it later. How about playwrights? Who are my playwrights in this group? I think there's one over here. Here. Don't be shy. Come on. Why do you like plays? Why did you pick a play for your story?
Because I was in a couple of plays when I was in college, and I told myself I could write a better play than I was in. So, yeah.
Okay.
And, yeah, I like writing plays. So.
Okay.
Mine's really a screenplay.
Hmm?
Mine is really a screenplay.
Okay, well, just
Other
sit there
than
and be
the
quiet.
actual.
We'll get to you. We have some more playwrights here? In the back, yes. Why did you pick a play?
When I was little, my father wrote plays that were produced in the little community theater.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just sort of doodled with, not when I was little, but as an adult, sort of doodled with that.
Uh-huh. Okay. Any other playwrights? I could have sworn there were more of you. Okay, that's all right. Plays are a good choice if you are excellent at dialogue, because plays are all about dialogue and character development. In a movie, we would get bored to tears if you had a gaggle of ladies like this sitting at a kitchen table talking for 90 minutes to 2 hours, and they never get up and do anything. They just sit there and they talk about their lives and their feelings. We accept that in a play because we love hearing people talk. We like to see what they're going through, how they interact with other characters. You can have more of a static environment with a play because people who go to the theater don't mind looking at the same set for 90 minutes or for 2 hours because usually the set is really interesting. There are other things they can look at. They go, oh, okay, I'm bored with all the talking, but wow, how'd they get that chandelier up there? That's pretty cool. Theater audiences, I have always found, they can operate on a greater level of abstraction than movie audiences, because you can have characters on sort of a dark, bare stage. You tell the audience either directly, or they look at their program and they say, oh, this is in the middle of a Bavarian forest. You don't even have to bring in all the trees and the bushes and the rocks or wild animals or anything, because a theater audience will accept, yes, we're in a forest now, and their imagination can fill in all of the blanks. The setting itself becomes a character in the play. If it's a fantastic, opulent set, my husband and I go to lots of plays and musicals when we go to New York, and some of the set design is so incredible. You're sitting there going, I wonder if I could go up and open those doors, or what's up that staircase, or I can see the sunlight coming in through the garden. Wouldn't that be a pleasant place to go out and sit out there? Well, no, you'd be backstage, but doesn't it look like it really exists? There's something out there. And the furnishing, the color, the lighting, everything about it becomes as interesting as the people. It's supporting what they're doing. If it's a gloomy castle scene, you feel really gloomy because they painted that venue for you, and you can really get into that. If you have a plot that requires intimacy and immediacy with your audience, think about playwriting. A lot of small theaters, and small maybe being 40 to 150 seats, the actors are pretty close to the audience. If I were on stage here, this would be a very intimate experience because you can look right at me. You can see me breathing. You can hear every little noise. And likewise, the actors who are on stage are knowing people are going, or they're fussing around. It's a very intimate connection. Your characters in a play make a far more intimate connection with the audience than 20-foot-high close-up faces on the silver screen. You know they're bigger than life. They're already actors, they're bigger than life, but whoa, if you're in the front row, it's hard to feel an intimate connection with them. As for immediacy, now keeping in mind that plays are dialogue-driven, and it's about the development of the characters, you know that there's a short time frame for them to solve their problems, to experience character arcs. Unlike a book, where if you get tired, you want to go do something else, you close the book, you put it aside, you get back to it, and you want to get back to it. But in a play, you know you are sharing this same room and this same air with characters, and before you leave that theater, something will have been solved. And you will have been changed in some way by having that almost physical contact with them, if you are that close that you can hear them breathing. Okay, aspiring screenwriters, you're on. Why? Why a movie?
We see a lot of movies. My husband and I, just a habit, I think. Ever since I was about 2 or 3, we knew the manager of the theater, and he let us in with just the tax, so about a quarter apiece, you know.
Uh-huh.
So I grew up watching a lot of movies, and then my husband and I go to a lot of movies. In fact, before they built all the cinemas up here, we went down to Victoria Gardens a lot. And one day the manager pulled us into the office, and we said, "Oh my gosh, what did we do wrong?" He says, "You've seen 600 movies in this place in the last 2 years." So I thought I would try to write one.
Okay. That's the best excuse I've heard yet. Why not?
And so they gave us a free movie and 2 free bags of popcorn and a couple of free cokes. So go enjoy another one.
Okay. More screenwriters. Yes, sir.
The medium has changed now. The opportunities beyond just the screen, television, multi-episodic, instead of telling a story in 2 hours, you're telling it in 10, which
Right.
gives you more time to develop characters and arcs and that. The traditional 22 to 24 episode network format is compressed down to 10, but still you have more time to tell stories in a 10-hour format than you would with a 2-hour movie or a 22-hour episode. So it's a new world, brave new world.
Okay. Anyone else? Screenwriters? Yes?
I wanted to try something different. So to compare it to playwriting, I think playwriting's easier.
Okay. Any others? Yes, in the back.
My problem is that I have 3 shows that I've already written. That's not the problem. The problem is the people that I present to can't believe that I can produce what I say. And I do military, police, and fire for most pictures. I've
Wow.
been doing this since 1997.
Uh-huh.
So I finally got tired of, getting people for other people's shows. So I wrote 3, and I even have letters to show that I can do what I say I can do, and they don't believe me. And I'm like, well, if I'm lying to you, then we don't have a deal. And so it's problematic for me because one has to do with federal government, one has to do with state of California, and one has to do with a local county. And I show them my letters. I'm actually a vetted liaison. I'm not a technical advisor.
Uh-huh.
People, technical advisors have to come to me. And when you tell somebody that I do this, I can get your aircraft carrier, my aircraft carrier, but, so that's my problem. It's not writing it. It's making people believe that what you're saying you can do, you can do. And I've got some pretty big people that you think, like, they give you a shot. You task you to do something, and I can do it, why not do the job? So that's kind of how your
Okay.
voice is, but I'm just saying that's my problem.
Okay. I have a lot of clients that gravitate to screenwriting because, wow, movies are glamorous, and they see, well, that's where the big money is, and that's what I want to be doing. There's also a misconception, if you go to lots and lots of movies, well, it must be easy, because movies are being made all the time. But keep in mind what you are seeing is the finished product. A lot of little paws have been on that from the time it comes out of the aspiring screenwriter's head and keyboard and it actually makes it to the screen. A lot of people have been working on it, but how many people go to the movies and they go, well, I could do that. That looks really easy, and so I'll just do that. It's very, very hard. Screenwriting lends itself well to epics, to action, to things that are lots of compelling visuals, science fiction, obviously, things where you can employ special effects and you can have car chases and you can blow things up. Well, yes, you can do that in novels, and your readers are seeing things blowing up and all the pyrotechnics. It's not impossible to do it on stage, but there are things that you can do. But with a play, all of the emphasis is on the dialogue and the characters. In film, there is not as much emphasis on the dialogue because it has to be big, it has to be loud, it has to be expansive. And it's also the whole immersive experience of theater, where there's the surround sound. There are some theaters now where if they're showing an end of the world movie, or an earthquake, or Mother Nature going berserk, there are actually mechanisms in the theater seats that you're going, I think we're having a real earthquake. Well, no, it's just, it's as if they're trying to make everything a ride, because we so want everything, all of the blanks filled in for us. I think for a while there was smell-o-vision, but then, I was like, wow, something smells funny in here, that doesn't work. Theaters can also control thermostats in the theater. I don't know if you remember when the Titanic movie came out. Interesting little device in the second half of the movie. Even if people were seeing it in the summer, they were going, I'm getting kind of cold. Well, the theater manager was turning down all of the thermostats so you would feel what it would be like in the North Atlantic and how very, very cold it was. So movies can manipulate a lot of things, but it's for the very big ideas, the epics, the explosions. And with a movie, and as big as everything is, you just can't get away from it. Yes?
Could you compare for TV movies to what you just spoke of, the large screen? Because more and more people are watching 1-hour dramas. And past that, I see a big drop-off of audience. That people are starting to get psychologically geared to the 1-hour drama, or even a series, but 1 hour at a time.
Right.
What's the big difference between writing for movies and writing for TV?
Well, if you're writing for TV, unless you're just streaming stuff on Netflix, you have to take into consideration that there are commercials. A 1-hour television program is not actually 1 hour. It's 44 minutes. Well, what happened to those other minutes? You're not getting your full hour. You're not getting those because it's the commercial advertising. And it's very hard. I know a lot of people who are writing for television, and they have to think in terms of compartmentalized little scenes. You start out with your first 11 minutes in the movie. The commercial's coming. You need to end that 11-minute segment with something so exciting that people will come back after the commercial. They won't wander off into the kitchen and then just not come back. And what was I watching? We watch a lot of movies on television, and if a television movie is straight through without commercials, we'll watch the whole thing. But if there's commercial after commercial after commercial, it breaks that thread of continuity. It takes a while to get back into whatever you were watching because your senses have been assaulted with buy this, buy that, go here, go there. A movie that is written for the silver screen, you have all the previews at the beginning, but then you just have the movie. And once you get pulled into the movie, you just stay there until the movie lets you go at the end of the movie. So that's the difference in what you're looking at. Television writing, I think I can compare it more to playwriting perhaps, but you're doing 4 acts instead of 3. You have 4 11-minute acts of stuff, but each thing is advancing the plot, and it's all revolving around the core conflict. For short stories and novels to come alive, you as writers do not need anybody else, especially in this age of self-publishing. You have a short story you want to put out there, you have a book that you want to self-publish, you don't have to go through anybody. If you know what you're doing, you go ahead, you can get it out there within minutes, within hours, or maybe at the most a couple of days. With traditional publishing, it's now 18 to 24 months from the time you sign a contract on your book to when it actually comes out. With that long stretch of time, you probably will have forgotten what you wrote. It's just too long to wait. And I think we have become more and more impatient. We want more control over our intellectual property. And so if you are self-publishing, designing your own covers, if you have blogs, you have complete control over that, and your vision from the time it came out of your head to the time someone read it, it's probably the most undistilled around, why don't we do this, why don't we do that? Not so with stage plays and movies, because they're very expensive. It takes a lot of people to launch them, to produce them. And unless you get into production yourself, you win the lottery, and we have Mary's favorite word, squillions to play with, and you're overseeing the whole thing. Otherwise, you're at the mercy of actors wondering what their motivation is, directors deciding, well, let's swap out this, let's swap out that, let's change all of these scenes. Maybe by the end of the day, the only thing they keep is your title, and you go to the movie and you go, did I write that? This doesn't look anything like what I came up with. Nor do you have any control over the casting. When you wrote your epic romance, you were really sure that this is perfect for Brad Pitt, right? The movie comes out and you go, why oh why is Justin Bieber in this? I did not see that at all. Which recalls an amusing story about Margaret Mitchell. She did not like Clark Gable as Rhett Butler. She was extremely disappointed in the movie. She sold all the rights for it to be produced. She didn't like it because she said, I did not have Clark Gable at mind, at all for this swashbuckling hero. And they said, well, who did you have in mind? And she said, well, if you go back and read the description, it is perfectly obvious it was supposed to be Groucho Marx. That's a big leap. But if you read that description, you'll go, yeah, the mustache, the sarcasm, the kind of eyebrow thing. So she didn't like it, but she didn't have any control over it. And so likewise, if you write a novel and Hollywood comes calling and they say, we want to make this a movie, you can say, I really, really want so-and-so, and they'll be, yeah, okay, that's nice, all right, go away now, we're just going to go ahead and do this. So you don't have a lot of control over it. Of these four things that we have talked about, which medium do you think gives your creative genius the longest shelf life? And I don't mean by shelves in a bookstore. Shelf life, immortality, it's going to be out there long past you. Which one? Okay. How many people say movies are the longest shelf life? Okay. How about novels? Okay. Did you know when your novel comes out, if it's published by a traditional publisher, the average shelf life in a bookstore is 2 to 6 weeks? Unless it flies off the shelves and sells fabulously. 30% of all trade paperback and hardcover books end up in landfills. That's sad, isn't it?
I'm discouraging.
Okay. In the back?
Okay, I'm new, but
Hello, new.
I wrote a book 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I really think it's for a movie,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be a great movie
Of
because
course.
it's totally action-packed,
Uh-huh.
and it's a true story. And I've never seen a movie done of this subject
Mhm.
except Seabiscuit.
Mhm.
It's a horror story.
Okay.
But it's, I think the time is good now because people are looking for movies where, number one, it's a true story, and number two, if it's a woman that maybe inspired other people or worked with all men in a man's world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wrote this, and it's kind of finished, but I don't know where to end. You know, how long, I don't know where I should end the book. And do I need to maybe try to get this published before, as a book, and then go after the movie part, or?
That would be an easier route because, as you can tell, Hollywood is running out of ideas. That's why they do all of these sequels and prequels and rehashes because I don't know, what we're going to do. And so they look to a lot of source material published novels, ripped from the headlines, true stories, successful Broadway plays. The operative word here is successful, because if something has been published and the public couldn't get enough of it, agents are going to be looking at, ooh, everyone seems to like that. Let's make a movie of it and just totally mess it up and make it terrible. But we'll make a lot of money, and we don't care. That, for someone who has never written a movie before or doesn't have any connections, writing a very successful something else first, getting a lot of buzz on it and getting people excited about it, that's an easier way than going to Hollywood and knocking on doors and going, I wrote this thing, I think it's really good, do you want to make a movie of it? Yes?
Can you speak to the way Ken Burns does his work? He bypassed Hollywood altogether.
He also had
And
squillions to do what he
produced
wanted
and
to
goes
do.
with one actual producer, PBS.
Mhm.
But his books sell like crazy too,
Yeah.
not just the filmings.
Well, it's because his books are very popular. People can't get enough of all of the historical research that he does, so it's a natural hop, skip, and a jump to do something bigger. But back to the question, golly, all right, we talked about, long shelf life. Is it novels? Is it movies? Is it a play? How many think it's a play? My playwright friend, why do you think plays will give your work the longest possible shelf life?
Because I like plays.
Because you said so, so it's now. In that,
I think it's really the subject matter and the presentation of whether it's one of the three or not. I've seen some plays that are staying with me now for 25 years that really impacted me, and I've seen some I didn't left in the middle, but in the same with books and movies. I think it's kind of a blanket statement to say one or the other has a long shelf life, because I think it really just does depend on the subject matter for me or for most people. I don't know. Now that I said that, I'll just get quiet.
yes?
I initially raised my hand for novels, but I know it's not novels now.
Okay. Process of elimination here.
Yeah, but I was just recalling last weekend, I was channel surfing, if you will, at home, and I stopped at, I don't even know what station it was, but Gilligan's Island was on, which, I'm sure has been off the air for 50 years. And I stopped there and I watched the whole episode, and I was singing the song afterwards. And my husband, I went there and teased him and asked if he knew the lyrics to the song, so I'm thinking, that's been a lot of years.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think, based on what you're sharing.
It's actually the right answer, drum roll, plays. Yay! Yes! Plays, you go back as far as the time of the Greeks. You also have Shakespeare. You have a bunch of people in between them and a bunch that have come after. Although novels and movies have changed and evolved along with the technology. Plays have basically stayed plays from the beginning of when people were doing plays. They didn't even have to be in a theater. They could be in a barn or in a bar or out on the grass. As long as you have at least one person to watch it and one person who is performing and doing something, that's theater. With plays, at any given time, across the country, throughout the world, your play that you wrote is being performed by different theaters. It's different actors, it's different directors, it's different venues. And they're not competing with each other. They all fell in love with a particular play and they decided this is what we are going to put on. It's sort of the ultimate do-overs. You go and see your play and you go, well, everyone seemed kind of off tonight. Then you go the next night and then everyone's on and it's perfect. So even if it is the same play and the same actors in your neighborhood community theater, It's always going to be a different performance every night because it's the dynamics, the interaction of the actors. It is also how they feed off of the audience. I was on stage for a lot of years, and one of the worst things is if you are in a comedy and you have a Friday night packed house full of non-laughers. Or maybe they had a bad meal. Maybe it was raining and they couldn't find a place to park. And they sit there and go, I could be home watching basketball. Why am I here? So the play is constantly changing, even if it's the same play. And wow, what a legacy. If long after you're gone, people are still performing your plays. People will still read books, they'll still go to movies. But frankly, with the Greeks and the Shakespeare stuff, they've got a huge, huge head start, and theater is still going. So I'm being signaled we're going to take a break.
We're going to take a break for 20, 25 minutes.
Okay, this is the question and answer portion. Since we have, what, Jenny?
Yes.
Half an hour? Or?
Yeah, about 20 minutes.
20 minutes, okay. So, so I want to cover, get to as many questions as I can. If you have like a long, well, I'm having a problem with my third act, whatever, can you just, email me. Let's try to stick to things that are going to be of interest to the whole group that you can learn from. So if it's something really detailed, or you want to rant about your agent or whatever, email me, okay? We're going to start right here.
What if you have a children's book that's already published by a different author?
We can't hear anything you're saying. We'll stand or use the microphone, please.
Okay.
Okay, oh, hey, you know what would be fun? I can pretend I have my own talk show. I'll come down and say, all right, what is your question?
Okay, if you have a children's book that has already been published
We
by...
can't hear.
Shove it in your face.
Children's book that's already been published by an established author, and then you want to make a play, a children's play, write a play around it. How does that work? How do you share royalties, or how do you work with that?
Okay, good question. If it is someone else's work, you can't, it might make a great movie, a great play. You can't just take it. It's kind of like stealing. You would need to contact them and say, I love, love, love your work. I think it would make a great play, great movie. You run the risk when you say that of them going, I would never have thought of that. Okay, I'm going to go do it myself. And then they cut you out completely. It's different with works that are in the public domain. You all know what copyright, public domain, really, really old stuff. If it has fallen into the public domain, it's pretty much up for grabs, and people grab a lot and do stuff with it. If it's a living author, you need to approach them through their agent or their publisher, explain what you want to do, and again, you're sort of at the mercy of them. If the agent says, oh, that's a really good idea, I'm going to have my client author go ahead and do it themselves, or we'll hire someone to do it, and we'll cut you out of it. I think it's much better to just be writing your own stuff. And if you feel that it would lend itself to adaptation, you learned a lot from this morning about, okay, it's a great children's story that I have written. Could it be something else? Apply all of those little tests to it. It could very well turn out that as a children's story, that was the best that it could be. Those of you who are novelists, if people say, oh, I absolutely loved your book, that'd make a great movie. Well, maybe it wouldn't. And don't feel badly about that, because you hit the jackpot writing it as a great book to begin with. You don't get extra points turning all of your work into other stuff. Focus on making whatever you wrote the very, very best that it could be. Okay, next question. Audience, audience, audience. Okay, you are on.
get a couple of your most successful, I guess, tips or methods of promoting books, especially at the early stages, obviously?
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent question. Isn't social media wonderful? You can go on Facebook and you can do little snippets of your latest thing you're doing. I do lots of teasers on Facebook because we're all going to become Facebook friends after this, right? And then you can see all this stuff. Little teasers of what's going on. I love social media. It's a great way to get all of your stuff out there for free. I also write lots of articles. I do a lot of interviews with authors, and I take advantage of, in my author bio line, having a mention of the latest book, or if a play is going on. It's just kind of a little gumdrop in a quiche, not a hard sell thing. You just casually mention it. The best way to sell books is not to try so hard to sell books. On the nonfiction that I do, I've established myself as an expert on stage, page, and cinema, on ghostwriting, on media matters, and what you want to do is establish a connection with your prospective buyers, that if they recognize you as an expert and a friendly, approachable person, and I always get great feedback whenever I do workshops or speeches, because they say, gee, you know, that Christina Hamlett person, she was kind of fun. I wonder if she knows stuff. Well, I'll go buy her books. I wasn't saying, buy my books. I'm saying, hey, I'm interested. Let me tell you the backstory about this, or humorous anecdotes. So I think the most valuable tip is become an expert, and whether you're doing fiction or nonfiction, be the person who knows the most about that and that others can learn from it, and be willing to share your expertise. And that's what makes people want to go buy all your books. Next. Yes.
How do you...
Stand up. You're on. It's your show now. It's the Susan show. Give it up for Susan.
If you're new, how do you know when you have a good balance of, like, excitement and dialogue and a little expose of explanation? You know, how can you tell when you're just being too corny or
Critique groups.
Absolutely. Thank you for the answer. Yes. Critique groups. And this will apply whether you're doing short stories, novels, stage plays, or screenplays. Listen to what your fellow wordsmiths have to say. If they're saying, this is really interesting, but boy, your characters talk a lot and there's not really a plot, or you go into so much detailed description. I don't recall the author's name, but there was a former interior designer who turned to writing kind of historical, multi-generational things. She was one of those people who had 3 names, Barbara something or other, something or other. And it was wonderful description. You could tell she had been an interior designer, because every time a character entered the room, she would describe all of the furniture and the wattage of the light bulbs, the plush of the carpet, and then, what the characters were wearing. And I'm like, what was this character's name again? Why did they come into this scene? It's way too much detail. Very good. If you want to get an interior design lesson, read her books, and there's a story somewhere in those chapters. But critique groups are a good way to see if you have struck the proper balance and if you're holding a reader's attention. The only thing I caution you on with critique groups, I've run some, I've been in some, is that everyone has their little imprint they want to make on your work. If you belong to a critique group of 10 people and they all say, oh, you know, I think the heroine should be a blonde, or why don't you set this in China, or you know what would be really cool, and you're furiously scribbling all of these notes, If you do every single thing that they suggested, it's no longer your book, and it's such a mishmash. So I encourage you to take advantage of the input of critique groups, write it all down, take it home, look at it, and you're not bound by any contract to do whatever silly things they suggest. You look at it, oh, well, yeah, that doesn't work, but you know, that's an interesting point. I can use it in my next book, but not in this one. So take it with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, it still has to be your book and the characters that you love. Yes?
Could you tell us a little, I can talk now.
You did, I love that, but stand up and have a microphone anyway.
Okay, my question is, could you tell us a little bit about the market for plays? And where is it? What is it? It's like, is it separate from the writing a book?
Okay, it's definitely separate from writing a book because, hello, it's a play. It's a completely different market. There are wonderful resources out there online. Don't you love the internet? You can look up anything you want and you can find it. For those of you who are playwrights who are looking for playwriting contests, playwriting resources, the names of every single theater throughout the United States or the United Kingdom or wherever people love plays, you don't even have to ask me. You can just Google it. You can say, theater companies in Boise, and it'll come up with a list. And what is so remarkable about looking up these things on the internet is they all have a list of their guidelines on how to submit things. Some of them don't want to see anything because they're writing all their own stuff. Or they will say, our submission period is May through September. Or we only want plays that are written by women. Or we want plays only from playwrights who live in Boise. Please pay attention to these guidelines. You don't get any points if you go, okay, I'm a guy, and I know you're looking for plays written by women, and I have to live in Boise, but I think you'd really like this. And they'll go, you can't follow instructions. We don't like you. Go away now. They know what their talent pool is. They know what their resources are, and they are very clear in spelling it out, because it takes a whole lot of time to read all of this stuff. They only want to be looking at stuff that they would reasonably be interested in producing. So if you don't want to go look it up on the internet, grab one of my business cards, email me, and say, where can I find theaters in Boise or whatever? And I'll say, well, here are a few. Why don't you go Google the rest of them? So, very easy to find stuff. Someone else? How much time do we have left? 20. Okay, we could do this all day, right? Sure.
This is probably a quick one.
Movie goes. No, stand up.
Yeah, back.
Stand up. You know the rules. Here, microphone. Yes, what's your question?
Okay, returning to the topic of movies, do you have to sign all your rights away, all their benefits away, or no? Or is it varies from contract to contract?
Excellent question. It does vary from contract to contract. If you're working with a small independent producer, you might have a little more negotiating that's going on. If you're lucky enough that your agent, and for reaching the big studios, you will need an agent, or you will already have to be a very, very famous person with a lot of stuff, or they're not interested in talking to you. The very big studios, they know what actors they're contracted with, how much they want to spend. They also have a finger on the pulse of what else is being produced by competitors. A colleague of mine spent maybe 8 or 9 years writing a screenplay about a Celtic warrior queen. Her name started with B. It was like Bodacious or something. and this was her passion project. She worked and worked and worked and worked on it. Comes to find out that this guy named Mel Gibson thought doing a movie about Bodacious or whatever was a good idea. And major film producers and directors will buy up a lot of stuff that maybe they will never do anything with, but they want to have it just to keep someone else from getting it. And the sad thing with all of the work she did on her screenplay over the course of years, no one in Hollywood was going to touch it because they said, well, you know, someday Mel might do something with it, and so we're just going to kind of let Mel have it. So you don't know what's out there or what's going on. An agent is going to have a better handle on what is already in production, what might be in production 25 years from now. You're not going to know all of that stuff, so. And with the casting too, you don't know who's available or what they would charge to be in your film. So that's why even though you really, really saw Brad Pitt in your epic, you could get Justin Bieber because he had a song that really fit. And you just go, ah, I'm not going to tell anybody that I did this. Next question. Oh, didn't you already have a question? You have another question for me?
I have one. You can go there first.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I just retired teaching, so I'm in the children's mode. But
Okay.
if you have like a children's fairy tale that doesn't have an author, like The Three Little Pigs, and then you make that story with a twist, how would you work that out with an author or getting permission, or you just write your story with a twist? Or any story with a different setting and different lesson?
Very good question. You're probably not going to like my answer, but I would not lie to you. This is the honest truth.
Would you repeat the question, please?
Three Little Pigs with a twist, you know, olives, whatever. The answer you are not going to like is there is nothing new out there. Oh, every author I talk to says, oh, but my story is really unique. It has never been done before. I don't think so. I'm pretty good at this. Every story you can think of, stories are based on reward, revenge, or escape, or a combination of those. If you've written a story and there's no reward, revenge, or escape, you probably don't have a story because nothing's going on. Everything you can think of, if you break it down, you can distill it down to folktales, mythology, Shakespeare, scripture, all of these things that have been core stories. And a lot of the early stories were to teach lessons, the difference between good and evil and, you know, being a good person and triumphing over whatever. So even a story that you say, yes, this is about a child who saves his whole village and everyone rejoices, and that story has never been done. Now, that story has been done a lot. What distinguishes all of you as authors is you could take the Three Little Pigs and you could keep them pigs if you want, or they could be lemurs, three little lemurs, or three little hamsters, or whatever, it's your story, with a twist. And people might say, that kind of sounds like the Three Little Pigs, but wow, these pigs do really cool things. I did not see that coming. And that's okay, because each one of you is a unique individual. You have a unique way of telling a story. You bring your own frame of reference, your background, your upbringing, how you see the world. Maybe you see the world really skewed and wacky, or maybe you see everything really dark. It could be the 3 zombie pigs. Okay, I don't think anyone has done that kind of twist on the 3 zombie pigs, but they have done the 3 pigs. And it's okay, because everything you are doing, you are the unique voice. When I've taught workshops and I've said, okay, here's a list of plots, and they're just like one-liners, and everybody in the room pick out one of these one-line things. What's your story going to be? Well, in a large crowd, there's a great likelihood there are going to be maybe 8 or 9 people who pick exactly the same line. But the stories they tell are all completely different, because it was how they interpreted that particular line. What genre was it going to be? Was it going to be horror? Was it going to be romance? Was it going to be a Western epic? Would it be comedy? Would it be drama? Would it be all women? Would it be zombie pigs? Whatever. That you each bring your own unique spin to it. So, does that answer your question? Yes. Okay, and I had a question.
And the big bad pig. So there you go.
My writing partner and I have been doing, I said, that sounds like a really stupid idea. And he said, oh, but I think it's going to make a lot of money, and you should do this. And my beloved said, well, you know, if you turn it down, they'll probably give it to someone else and it might become hugely successful. And I thought, well, I guess I better do that then. And so I found the wonderful playwriting partner that I have now, that I have never met in person. We do everything by email. We've known each other since 2012. We both live in Los Angeles County. Weird, huh? But we've decided we're never going to meet each other. So we decided that we would take 3 Shakespearean plays, and by Seuss-spear, we mean that we have lots of funny rhymes, but they're basically 3 stories. We did Meet the Macbeths. We did Hamlet Here's a Who. All the characters are in Shakespearean costumes, but there are some pop culture references. In Hamlet Here's a Who, all of the characters have cell phones with different ringtones. Ophelia's ringtone is the wedding march, because she's kind of hung up on marrying Hamlet. And then we did Romeo and Juliet's Restaurant Wars, where we find out the real reason that the Montagues and the Capulets were fighting is they had restaurants next door to each other, and they were competing for people to come to the restaurants. We've also done a trio of Jane Austen spoofs, because Jane Austen is very, very popular to do stuff with now. And so we did Cliffhanger Abbey. Oh, we had monsters, we had vampires, we had some zombies. You see, Hyde and Prejudice, in which we have Jekyll and Hyde mingling with Austen characters. And then the latest one is Seance and Sensibility, in which the impoverished Dashwood sisters send away for a little booklet on how to do at-home seances so they can help other people's love lives and maybe find romance on their own. So you see, we're taking stuff that already existed, but we're doing something funny with it, and yes?
Well, I had a question in the back of your mind.
Yes, Hamlet really is my real last name. I didn't make it up to be in theater. And it's Hamlet with 2 T's because Shakespeare actually misspelled his. That's what you're all going to ask, right?
And do you have any funny stories having to do with being a playwright and Hamlet as your name?
Most of the time, when I'm dealing with new producers or directors, they say, Christina Hamlett is such a cool name. What's your real name? Did you make that up? And I said, no, Hamlet with 2 T's really is my last name. It has been an advantage because You're not going to forget a playwright whose last name is Hamlet. There is something funny, though. I noticed a couple of people who were over at the table were asking, was Christina Hamlett my real name, and was this handsome man Mr. Hamlett? No, the handsome man has been my husband for almost 20 years. His name is Mark Webb. But it's funny when we go to gatherings that I'm doing, they'll refer to him as Mr. Hamlet. Or if I make hotel reservations for us and then we check in and people follow us around and they say, "Are you having a good time, Mr. Hamlet?" And he's, "Why, yes I am, because I'm with her." When we go to political functions of his, I get to be Christina Webb. So it's sort of like being born on the cusp. You know, I'm on the cusp of Aries and Taurus, so I read both horoscopes and I go with whichever one feels like the right vibe. It is especially funny, though, when we go out of the country and we check into a hotel and we're showing our passports and we're very affectionate and we're both obviously wearing wedding rings. And I'm sure there are little titters of, those two are cheating on their spouses. This is Christina Hamlett and Mark Webb. But no, we're very happily married, so that's as funny a story as I can get. Yes, Hamlett. And if you lose my business card and you want to find me and ask me a question or whatever you're having problems with, and you've lost my business card, well, all you have to remember is Hamlet with 2 T's. If you Google that into your browser, I come up, 83,000 places. It's very easy to find me, so I can't get away from you.
And
Yes.
that's a wonderful way to end.
One more question.
All right, one more.
One more, okay.
Well, if you go to have your notes written professionally, like a rough copy made, or whatever you call that.
First draft?
First draft of a book? Is that what it's called? And how much does that cost?
You do it yourself. Yes, unless you want to tape record your story. I'm someone who has to compose at the keyboard because otherwise, yes, right. Although once in a while, I will get screenplays from people. I got one that was handwritten once, and I thought, what is this? It's not as funny as the one, though, where the person had their ideas about casting, and so they went to People magazine, and they cut out all of these little oval heads, and then they were taping them in the margins and drawing lines and saying, "I think Angelina should play this role." It was very entertaining to read, but no. With screenplays and plays and novels, there are lots of books out there on the proper formatting of things, and it has to be typed. And if you just want to tape record your stuff and then hire someone to transcribe it for you. But what's the fun of that? I think that creates some kind of detachment with your characters. Someone else is having all the fun of writing.
I thought you had to have that done professionally.
No. It has to be in a professional industry standard format, but no, type it yourself.
Is there a minimum page that you have to have for your book?
A minimum page.
Yeah, it can't be 10 pages.
Page count. No, oh, okay. If you're writing a novella, which is a short novel, it's generally around 20,000 to 50,000. Over that, you're getting into novel territory. Pages, yes. Okay. It's funny, I will ask people at these workshops, how many words do you think are in the average length novel? And I've had some say, oh, maybe around 175 words, and I'm thinking, you don't get out much, do you? Then I have people who say, oh, it has to be at least 2 million. And I'm thinking, War and Peace wasn't even 2 million words.
What about the
Movies and plays are determined by pages. Every typed page of script, and plays and screenplays are alike in this way. Every typed page equals 1 minute of screen time or stage time. And movies and plays are generally around 110 pages. Now, with plays, you can have something as short as a 10-minute script, which would be, okay, folks, how many pages? 10-minute script?
10 pages.
Yay, 10 pages. You can have a 1-act play that could be 30 to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour. If you get more than that, then you're getting into 2-act and 3-act plays. That's going to be longer, but if you keep in mind that rule about pages and minute of playing time, you really don't want people in a theater sitting there for 7.5 hours, unless it's a really gripping play, and I think you should stay under 2 hours.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're done.